Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire people to birth confidence, self-worth, to birth their books and business ideas, dreams, passions, and goals, as well as help them discover peace amongst infertility. After going through my own sets of traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we all experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your hardships and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life so you can breathe fire on this world. This week's episode is called Does the Body Talk? And some points we'll cover are discussing the importance of both Eastern and Western medicine, why it's so vital to uncover the root cause of illness and dis-ease. We'll chat about belief systems and how our emotions govern our organs. And I have my friend here, Lauren Scherger, to speak on this topic. Lauren is an expert in the holistic health field. She's a Body Talk practitioner, nutritional supplement advisor, and guide to those looking for deeper answers to an alternative approach. But her journey to get there wasn't a warm and fuzzy one. At 24, she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which left her unemployed and in debilitating pain for years. Using sheer will, knowing that there was an answer much deeper than this just happens to some people, she embarked on a journey to get to the root cause of what triggered her pain. After discovering Body Talk, she was able to find answers and the solution to what had initiated her health breakdown. Armed with this newfound knowledge, she was inspired to share all that she had learned with others. This sparked her opening up her own practice where she now guides others through their own personal journey of wellness. She has been pain-free for over 6 years now. She is a trendsetter and an influencer for overall health and wellness. Welcome, Lauren, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you.
Me too. We do have a history together. You have been my mentor, and I've been your client for many years now to help me work through this autoimmune condition. And you've really sparked interest in me and passion to want to be the pilot of my own health and navigate through that. So you've just been an incredible, person for me, mentor and coach, and I've just valued all your wisdom and your love for being healthy and well again. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And, that is really what drives me to continue this important work is, just, being part of the journey where you're lighting other people up, because I've been there in the dark and, you feel alone, you feel like there's no answers. And, when someone comes into your life, it can be a lighthouse to help kind of light up that path for you and, give you some direction. Then when you start to find it on your own, it's so empowering. And, that's really everything that I'm looking to accomplish within my life personally and professionally is to inspire myself, to inspire others, and to not be a victim of circumstance.
I totally agree. And you opened my eyes to that. I never had looked at health and wellness that way as a whole picture. And you really created such an amazing platform to help people make connections, and you help them dig deeper below the surface. And you've just been such a driver in helping me get through a lot of illness, disease, and, trauma, and just looking at things in a different perspective, and that you've been there before. And it's so helpful, like me with my footprints in infertility and loss work, that I've been there so I can have that empathetic approach where I actually know and feel what people are going through because I've been there. And same with you. You've been through that and you've come to the other side, so you're able to connect with others on a very deeper level, hey?
Yeah, exactly. I find with a lot of this type of work, it's like you can't take someone somewhere you've never been before. And so, unfortunately, what that looks like is going through experiences in your life that are painful, are disappointing, are frustrating, what I would consider some of our darkest moments. We all hear that there's lessons in those, but when we're in the shit, it's really tough to be like, how is something good going to come out of this? But to be able to get through the other side of the tunnel and to transform and transmute those experiences into shared wisdom and knowledge that you can then dispense with others. It's so gratifying, and it makes those experiences worth it in a sense, not that you really want to go back there to them, no one wants to revisit those dark times, but, you can really get a sense of understanding how it has, made your purpose in life, and yeah, the only way out is through.
Yes, 100%. And I think we're both very big advocates of that. Your pain is a gift because there's an opportunity to turn it around, and whether it's your passion or help heal yourself, that is the key, is to turn into it and work through it. So you're a walking example of that. And so we talked a little bit about your bio, that you went through fibromyalgia. Maybe walk us through that journey a little bit more on a deeper level of what took you through that journey and got you to the other side as a practitioner now helping other people.
Yeah, well, I used to be a hairdresser, and I was pretty much a workaholic. So I was quite successful in what I was doing, and I really didn't know how to say no. So I was working extremely long hours, long days, not eating right. I didn't really have a great support system in my life at that time. And, I just really had this sense of being on my own. And then, one day, I'll never forget it. It's still like it was just, 5 minutes ago. I was just sitting on the couch one evening, and I was like, oh man, my back is really hurting. And I'd never had back pain before. And it hurt so bad. And it just every day got progressively worse and worse and worse till, all of a sudden I'm in the hospital and I'm on all these pain medications and muscle relaxants. And it was the fastest snowball in the bad direction or the wrong direction. And, I had tried everything. I had gone to the chiropractor. I'd gone to massage therapists. I'd gone to physiotherapists. I had had x-rays. I had CT scans. And everything that came back was like that the scans are clear. There's nothing really wrong. Like there's nothing structurally wrong. Your blood work is good. And I'm in the type of pain where I thought like I'm dying. I for sure have cancer or a tumor like in my spine or something. I am dying for sure. So after a couple months of, I wasn't able to work or anything and just continuing kind of navigating the traditional health field of kind of all the practitioners you go through. When I came to the end of that and I was worse than ever, I thought, okay, like there to me is no such thing as no answer. And, my personality is not a complacent one. I'm always about questioning and just being inquisitive and curious. And to me, it was like, okay, well, if there's physically nothing wrong with me, yet I'm feeling physical pain, what the F is going on? And then I had a friend say, well, hey, have you ever tried Body Talk? No, I have not. I have not heard of it. So, I did some researching and I found a practitioner, and with my very, very first treatment, I had so many answers, so many insights, so much clarity, and my pain wasn't completely gone, but like it went from like a 10 to a 7, which, it in that space, when you're in that space for 6 months, that is like an amazing day. It's like, I don't want to die today, because that's really, anyone who lives with chronic pain, you go through these periods of time where you just want to die. Like, you just don't even know how you can keep going on and keep living like this. So it's like I had finally seen a break in the clouds, and I just knew, like, I have to do this. Like, this is what I was meant to do. I just know it in my bones. And yeah, that really sparked my journey. I just jumped full bore and started taking all of the courses to become a practitioner. And it wasn't just about becoming a practitioner. It was about bringing in self-knowledge and self-wisdom, because, you can't heal or help anyone if you haven't healed or helped yourself first. So kind of like we were discussing previously, it's like you have to go through that first and come out the other side before you're going to help anyone in a healthy way. So, primarily I did all of that training. So, to date, I think I've done well over 50 courses in that modality. And it just gave me so much clarity and answers, that the way I had been living my life, my mindset, of what was going on was really what was at the root of all this pain. So inside, emotionally and mentally, I was in so much pain, so much sadness, despair. I'd had, problems and struggles with my family that were unresolved. I was in a really unhealthy relationship. And for me, it was my perception of just feeling so alone and so abused and unloved. And, I just internalized it. And I just shoved it all in my back, put all of those emotions, all of those negative thoughts, all of those hurtful experiences, and I shoved them in my back until my back was like, all right, we can't take it anymore. And then it turned into physical pain. So once I really started working on forgiveness and changing my perspective and understanding more about the place people are coming from, it's usually not personal. It usually has a lot of what's going on with them or how they were raised or their experiences. And just by gaining that wisdom and understanding, and then getting a lot of the treatments to help to release all of those emotions. Yeah, it took a couple years because I had a lot of baggage to unpack. But, I got out of that unhealthy relationship. I rekindled great connections with my family. I got another career that I loved, which was Body Talk and working at a health food store, and had just amazing support systems, amazing friends, and just true friendships, that really filled my cup inside. And found my now husband, who is, just a great, strong, inspirational influence in my life. And yeah, I've been pain-free for over 6 years. Like, I have no back pain and no issues. And, I'm just so hyper aware now that it doesn't mean that I never get negative thoughts. It doesn't mean that I don't experience emotions. I run the gamut. I'm a very emotional being. I experience anger and sadness and frustration and depression at times. But for me, it's about noticing why I'm feeling that way, giving myself permission to feel that way, and then kind of the solution of like, well, okay, what do I need to do to not feel this way? And that has really helped me to kind of keep those issues of chronic pain or any other illness at bay. So I recommend that, anyone who has chronic pain or any type of illness within their body, mind, whether that's physical, whether that's emotional or mental, even things like depression and stuff like that, there's all these components to these unhealed wounds and traumas that we're just trying to cope with in life. Everyone's just trying to get through life the best way that they can. And a lot of times we don't have the space to look at that stuff. So, when we create that space and we can actually start to unravel the stories behind our illnesses, it's, it wants our attention. It's a part of us. It's an aspect of us.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for taking us through that journey and really highlighting that it's going through the fire and it's not a quick fix. This is not an easy way to get a fix for your problem, but it's going to unravel it and actually get at it where you invoke healing rather than mask it with, numbing it or just a quick pill and pain management. Like, let's work at actually removing the pain, right? So that's what I loved about this practice and kind of blew my mind on different connections and things I had no even idea about because no one actually put the two and two together. So I just love this practice so much, but people are like, body talk? What the heck is that? How does your body talk? And so maybe you can explain to us what body talk practice is all about and what you do with Bloom Whole Healthcare.
Yeah. So how do we get the body to talk? So basically, what I like to tell my clients is every single person's body has the ability to heal. And so if you cut your hand, usually we just slap a Band-Aid on it and we go on about our day. We're not telling, okay, red blood cells, you need to do this, lymphatic system, you need to do that. Our body has that built-in knowledge and wisdom of how to heal itself. And so why do we have issues that happen where the body's not healing itself? Why do we have knee pain for years on end? Why do we have gallbladder stones, or any issue that's going on? Why is it become a chronic issue? So what I'm doing essentially is all of my training has given me like a pool of information to draw from of options. Some are physical, like our organs, like our hormonal system. Some are emotional, so, our fear, anger, grief. Some are mental. So that's going to be things like belief systems in the subconscious. So, everyone has belief systems. We live in a society and culture where we have ideas about everything. So, we might say things like, well, if you got to work hard to get money, or, all men are ... or women are ... or, bosses just take advantage of you. And so those are examples of negative belief systems, but everyone has them. And lots of times they are drawn on from our experiences as we're growing up, and they keep getting reinforced by our environment. So whether that's family, friends, relationships, and so sometimes we're working with the subconscious mind because it kind of shoves all of these ideas and concepts way down in the brain. And so sometimes it just needs to be addressed. So what I'm doing is I'm asking the body questions via muscle testing. And so some people have heard of kinesiology. It's very, very similar. So I'm using the hand to ask the body a series of yes-no questions. And basically I have my chart that I'm going through asking these yes-no questions. And I'm asking the individual's body, mind, or brain, or however you want to label it, hey, what's the problem? What's the priority, and what do we need to do to fix it? Because sometimes within the body, it's almost like if you think of an outlet and a plug-in cord, sometimes the cord's just unplugged and it needs to get plugged back in. And this can happen through stress or anything like that to cause connections within the body to be disconnected. And then sometimes we have connections that are plugged in that are maybe unhealthy ones. Maybe they're not serving you anymore, so some of these old emotions, old attitudes, a really common one is it's like people really reject expressing anger, or maybe you're in a space where you can't express it. Maybe you're at work and you're so pissed off, but hey, it's not appropriate to yell at your boss or coworker because you'll get fired. So you got to kind of shove that down. And lots of times we just bury those emotions in our body and we never really deal with them later. And so, sometimes we're just helping to bring the brain's focus and attention to those buried emotions or those ideas or thoughts. And just by the brain kind of getting aware of what's going on, it can help to just kind of unlock it from the body and release it. So I like to visualize like uprooting a weed out of the body. And so, the individual's body is doing it all on its own. And so sometimes people are like, well, if my body knows how to do it, why isn't it doing it? Well, you know what? The brain gets really distracted. It's multitasking like a million different things. And most of us live in a version of stress mode. We're rushing to work, we're rushing to get the kids to school, we're trying to make meals, we're trying to clean the house, we're trying to make enough money. And it's like we got so many plates spinning. I always think of the person who's spinning plates on sticks and just trying to keep them spinning. If that represents our mental capacity of the typical person in North America or anywhere in the world, it's like the brain isn't going to be like, oh, hey, I really need to pay attention to this thing over here and fix it and heal. It's like, we don't have time to heal. Like, we got to keep the train on the tracks. Mm-hmm. And so that's how your brain can get distracted from sending the healing resources of, circulation. Maybe it's, blood or lymph or nerve supply to an area to heal it. It's like, that's, you're not going to die from that right now. We're trying to keep us focused on what's important, on what it thinks is important. So we're really just kind of almost like slowing down all the plate spinning and being like, hey, look over here. Look what you didn't notice was going on. There's a raccoon in the kitchen.
Yes.
Of your body.
Right? And so often we can't see it. We're too close to it. We're in it. So it's great to have this outside perspective that's not emotionally attached, that's not in it, that can be like, oh, hey, and basically zooming out, because when you're so in it, you can't see the problem or maybe contributing problems. But as a practitioner, you're basically doing a zoom out and a zoom in to kind of make those connections that we weren't aware of, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, that is so true. I mean, I think anyone can relate to that, because even in any layperson's day-to-day dynamics, it's like we can always see, what's going on in someone else easier than they can. Yeah. It's easier to observe the dysfunction in someone else than it is in ourselves, So I think that that's a really great point. Sometimes you need that third person perspective to be an observation, to kind of pick out these things or notice, these areas that need to be worked on. And oftentimes what I find the client will say is they'll be like, oh my God, that is true. When they hear it, like repeated back to them, that it really resonates with how they have been feeling or what they have been thinking, but they just haven't had the space to connect with that.
Oh, absolutely. And it is a holistic approach, but I'm not dissing, going to doctors either. I'm a huge supporter of championing Western and Eastern medicine. I have a health condition. I need medicine to keep me alive, but I'm also looking to other avenues to uproot the problem, because I feel, Western medicine is great at critical care, great at keeping you alive, but it doesn't necessarily have the capacity or the time or the energy to focus on that root cause. We treat the symptom. But that's what I love about Body Talk, is that I can keep myself alive and functioning, but then I can go, explore holistic approaches in Body Talk to help me find out the why, help me find out what is causing the pain and the problem, so I don't just have to keep using medicine to mask the symptom. Like, I want to actually understand what's happening and treat the problem and get rid of it. So is that the premise of Body Talk? Like, walk us through, like, what's the why behind Body Talk?
Yeah, well, first off, I absolutely agree with you. I find that a lot of times people feel that they have to be one extreme or the other. Like, they either have to be full bore, doctors only, holistic alternative medicine is woo-woo and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have the other end of the spectrum of like, no, it's got to be all love, light, healing herbs, like stay away from Western medicine. And you know what? I think both those extremes are bullshit. You know, we need both, because if I get hit by a car and you go to like, you know, sage me and put some like magic herbs on me, I'm going to be really pissed off because I'm probably going to die. Like, go take me to the hospital. I want the ambulance. I want the EMTs. I want a doctor to stitch me back up. I want some painkillers. And then once I'm, you know, taken care of on a first aid basis, then I want to bring in, you know, Body Talk. I want to bring in, you know, vitamins and herbs and supplement to support the healing process. I think it's so important to have both. And I really hope that people can start to accept using both, that it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other, because both have such great benefits. And you know what? As you said, like, some people need medication. Like, it's imperative for their day-to-day life to be on pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. That is okay and necessary. And it's also super important to not just put on blinders and to not look at like what the problems are in your life, where, you know, what's going on in your mindset, your personality, your perspective that really isn't working for you, that might be contributing to the illness or disease, you know? So I don't know, like, I just feel like that is the point of holistic medicine. You're looking at the whole picture, you know? I don't think you can have one with the other.
You can't. And yeah, it's just finding a way to marry the two together and not be, okay, this is my death sentence, I have an autoimmune disease, because that's what happened to me. And it was like, you know, I find it funny with Western medicine. It's like autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia. It's just like this black hole of, I don't know. We don't know what's wrong. So we're just going to throw autoimmune disease and then we just accept. And, you know, yes, get the medicine, go for the treatments wherever in Western medicine. But I'm definitely one of those passionate extremists where I'm like, I refuse an I don't know answer. I want to know. And that's when I exhausted the healthcare system of trying to find out the why and why is this happening and how can you not treat it beyond just critical care. And I ended up stumbling across you. And the very first appointment, you made such a profound connection with my disease and what was going on internally that it blew my mind. And that's why I'm such an advocate for Body Talk and your work, because you sat there not knowing me, we never met before, and you just said, hey, so you have an autoimmune disease where your body physically attacks itself. I'm like, yes. And you're like, I can sense already do you think there's a connection with that and your body attacking itself and the fact that you hate yourself so much and you attack yourself with your thoughts? Like, maybe your body is listening to your internal messages that you're giving yourself. And it just like, wow, like blow my mind of like, I never thought of it that way. No one's ever put those two and two together. No one has even recognized I had bad self-esteem and self-hatred. And you sat there and just took the time to read me as a whole. And I value that so much because that changed the course of my life and the way I think by making that connection. And you do really well making those connections with people. And I love that. So I think that's so important in finding the root cause. Hey?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the thing is, you know, the person or the version that we show the world isn't always a true reflection of how we feel about ourselves or what's going on in our head. But the body never lies. Like, that is like, it's your truth meter, you know? And so because I've had training in decoding the body, as soon as someone says what type of illness or pain they have, I immediately know what type of personality they have, because You cannot have one without the other. They're a symbiotic connection together. And so, yeah, just to touch on autoimmune diseases or chronic pain, like fibromyalgia and things like that. But autoimmune, yes, it is the body. So the immune system gets confused and starts attacking itself. So it can't differentiate between what's healthy and what's not healthy. So it's like, normally the immune system is looking for pathogens and bacteria and viruses to fight off. But with autoimmune, there isn't any of that. So it just kind of gets bored and starts attacking itself. And obviously I'm really, really minimizing, what's going on there. And so, yeah, what it is reflecting is a thought process or a personality of someone who, I call it the judge, jury, and executioner. So that personality, it's like they judge themselves, judge their actions, judge their behaviors, then they punish themselves over it, so kind of like, oh, you got to do better, you got to do more, you got to do, they kind of bully themselves inside. So it can be confusing for some to be like, oh, well, how could that look like, hating yourself? You seem so confident. You have such drive and ambition. Well, yeah, of course you do. Like, it's kind of the flip side of the coin. It's like when we have drive and ambition, it's because there's this internal part of us that is pushing us to like be better, be greater, do more. But a lot of times the way that we can do that is usually by noticing our imperfections. Mm-hmm. You did this wrong. You did that wrong. You can do this better. Right? And so it is that type of internal dialogue of just kind of like almost picking on you and noticing all your mistakes and all your flaws that gets confused. And so with each person, I always talk about every person has a chink in their armor, a weak spot in their body where they shove all their stuff, all their emotions, all their crap, all their experiences. So for you, it's your immune system and your lungs, mm-hmm. right? And so the lungs are all about grief. They hold the emotion of grief. So if we've experienced a lot of grief in our lives, that might be an area of vulnerability where we shove all our shit. And everyone has a different spot in their body. For me, it's my middle back. Like, if I'm not dealing with stuff, that is where I shove all the garbage. And that is the chink in my armor. For someone else, it might be their reproductive system or their kidneys or their knees. Each person, it's going to be so different. And, each body part and each organ represents a different consciousness, a different personality aspect, different emotions. So whatever is prevalent in that person's life, that's going to be like their little garbage area.
Totally. And it's just so good to show a spotlight on that. But I know in society, we take it the other way. We don't want to show. We don't want to highlight my weak spot. I don't have a weak spot. What are you talking about? I show the highlight reel. I show all what I'm good at, not with the bad. But you don't heal. Like, that's the thing. Like, I did a heart release type of dance. I did a chakra dance class, and someone walked out of there one time. It's like, that was painful for them emotionally, that they would rather go get a tattoo. And that made a huge awareness to me that people are willing to deal with the physical pain, but don't want to actually dig and feel that emotional pain. But the key right here is that you actually dig it up and work through it. You don't longer have to feel that kind of internal pain anymore. And that was the big realization with me, was like, yes, I'm an overachiever because I do feel lack and not good enough and struggle with grief and feelings of unloved, right? Like, so, but I've been working through that, and I don't continue to feel that overload. I'm healing that part of me where I'm able to be confident, that I'm able to heal my body and change the narrative that my body's listening to my thoughts. So I really encourage people, like, just, try it out. And it doesn't hurt you. It's not a pill. It's not some procedure. It's not going to hurt you in that kind of way. So try it. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But like, investigate. If you're not finding answers somewhere, try another avenue, because you're going to ensure you don't find the answer unless you try another avenue, right?
Yeah. And I think that, what you touched on is like, it is work. Doing that soul searching and digging up personal work, it is like the hardest work out there. It is not for the faint of heart. And I think that's why it's so difficult for some. And, tattoos, for example, someone would rather get a tattoo. Well, they're just trying to address it in a different way, because tattoos are really an aggressive form of acupuncture. So, wherever you get your tattoo placed on your body, it's usually tapping into some type of meridian or center that's trying to release whatever you have going on there. Wow. So, maybe consciously you're not wanting to address some traumas, but subconsciously your body is drawn to release it. It doesn't want to hold on to that. So you might be doing piercings or tattoos, and again, aggressive forms of acupuncture to try and open up and release that garbage that's in there. But I'll say again, it's not for the faint of heart. But I think what I would note is, when you said, like, why don't people want to look at their stuff, or be vulnerable enough to look?
Yeah.
And, I think what I would say is that, when you discover what is going on underneath, I think it's hard, because deep down, you knew. You knew what was going on. You know what's down there. But sometimes it's so hurtful or shameful or, traumatic, that just having to experience it again or acknowledge that it's still a part of you it's so hard, because a lot of us will say things like, I've dealt with that, or that doesn't bother me anymore. And it's usually a really good indication. Like, if you have to verbalize it, you probably haven't dealt with it completely. Maybe aspects of it, but it's probably still swimming down. I think of the subconscious as like the really deep part of the ocean, and it can be really hard to have to, because like I said, the only way out is through. So it's like you have to bring up these traumas to the surface and kind of look them in the face and recognize them and stare them down, and then allow them to be released after that. And that can be really hard. It's almost like looking at your personal demons. Like, that's scary. That's intense. But, I know for you, like, you're so hardcore. And I know I'm pretty hardcore too. So it's like, let's do this.
Yeah. Rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do it. Yeah.
So, there's of course there's lots of people out there like that, but, for the people who can't do it on their own, that's why it's so important you get a facilitator to help guide and lead you through that. And that's something that I do, or other practitioners, is like, we're here to guide you, to be like, look, I have been through it, and I will lead you through the darkness. Take my hand. I won't do it for you, but I'll walk beside you.
Exactly. And, you talked a little bit about subconscious, and I know you once gave me a visual of what that means, because often we think about like an iceberg. And so our illness or whatever conflict or whatever problem is on the surface, it's often so much broader and deeper, like an iceberg, where it's way bigger on the bottom of the below surface, which is your subconscious or behind the scenes. But what you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg, right? So we have to go way beyond and dig deeper and broaden our, expansion of our looks on all of that to see where the root is. And so that was a good analogy for me to understand, that's what's happening below the surface. We need to go way beyond just what I see as the problem, because that's often not even the problem. It's just where it's presenting, right?
Absolutely. That's very well spoken and a great analogy, because that's exactly what it's like. By the time we end up having an illness or a disease, it is like the end result of so much stuff at play under the surface. So, if you imagine digging up that 90% of the iceberg, it's going to take some time. Like I said, for me, it took a couple years. And I mean, a couple years of like daily, I was unemployed for 2 years in there because of the pain. And it was all day, every day. I committed myself 24/7, 365, like buried in it, like, because I was just like, I am not going to live this way. Maybe not everyone has the luxury of being able to do that. So it is to uproot that iceberg of what's all underneath. It does take time, because you know what? It took time to get the illness. That didn't just happen overnight, even though it seems that way.
Yeah, sometimes we think we just woke up and we're sick, but it actually took years to get to that point.
Absolutely. And then we can feel impatient. Like, why is it taking so long for me to get better? It's been a couple weeks or a couple months. It's like,
that's me.
Yeah.
I'm like, why isn't it better yet? And I had to realize we are undoing a lot, and it takes time and effort, but it is worth it. I've seen, and you can attest, like, from when the day I walked into your, office was like, and compared to now, like, wow, what a 180 transformation. Like, I'm still walking out full of that healing, but so many things have been healed and unearthed in that journey, and it is worth it. It is like the greatest gift you can give yourself, right?
Absolutely. And, just being with you on that journey, it is so amazing and gratifying, and, like a sense of like, I'm so proud of you. There's so many people that you've influenced in your life. And, even if we go right down to your inner circle, your relationship with your daughter, your relationship with your family, it's just rippled out. And now, you're doing all of these great public speaking gigs and inspiring others to be vulnerable and, search for their truth. And, your personal work that you've done is just rippling out and affecting so many others. And it's just like this wonderful catalyst, of just the positive domino effect,
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's great to have a good mentor that encourages it. And you were a coach. Like, you've pushed me. I haven't always liked you because I'm like, I don't want to deal with that, right? Like, but it helped me. That's just like a good coach. You drive, you push, and you say you've got one more push in you, and then it unlocks another key, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. But it's not always fun, like you said. It's not always easy, but it is worth it, because you will reap the benefits of putting that investment into your health and wellness and overall healing yourself and being the best versions of yourself. But I think we get locked into our own heads and our own belief systems. You mentioned about belief systems here. And I wanted to kind of, explain that a little bit more, because I think we get locked off into these kind of ideals that we have, and then we shy away from like holistic medicine, because maybe we don't want to do one, doesn't mean all don't agree with us, right? So like, how come we have belief systems? Like, maybe let's talk about that a little bit. How do we develop those?
Well, it really is just part of the framework of the world that we live in. So we develop belief systems like right from the day we're born, essentially. And so especially, everyone talks about that first 5 years of childhood. So what we're looking at is, how is the world working? How are people getting their needs met? Observing their parents' relationship. Okay, how do men and women who, quote, love each other, treat each other? How do they speak to each other? Okay, how do parents treat their children or people who they're, are kind of in an authority position of? So right from a young age, we start to develop like how we view authority figures, because it starts as our parents, but then one day we have teachers, coaches, bosses, or people in society, like maybe doctors, or, where they're more of an authority figure. And, if you have an authority figure in your life from a very small child that is maybe condescending, demeaning, angry, abusive. Well, what happens is you develop that is what authority figures look like. And then you go to school and maybe you have a mean teacher, or you get a job and maybe you have a really mean boss. And what happens is each experience keeps reinforcing that is true. Yep, that is true. That is true. And you go through life feeling that way and experiencing, because you're like a magnet drawing in these experiences. Now, if you have a child that has, and it's not to like knock on parents, but just as an example, you have parents that are, not abusive, I guess, and more supportive and more nurturing and things like that, then they might have a belief system of like, oh, people in authority positions want to listen to me. They want my input. They have my best interests in heart. And then they're going to go through life and maybe attract those experiences like, oh, I have such great bosses, or I have such great teachers, so that's how an example of how we can develop a positive and negative belief system. And, it just kind of keeps going from there. So as society, we have our culture of, in say Alberta, Albertans behave or think differently than maybe people in Ontario. And we know that because there seems to be some kind of like, I don't know, weird East Coast, West Coast thing going on there. But, or how Canadians act versus how Americans act in the world, the perception of that. So we have our culture, and then we have religion, we have Christianity, Buddhism, all of these different things where there's those beliefs within those religions. So you start looking at each person, and it's like all of the different labels that each person has expectations and belief systems and ideas around how do you behave in the world, or, what does the world look like to you, or how should it look, and that's how we'll meet people. And there's maybe like different hierarchies within them. Maybe they think that men are better than women, and women should be doing this and men should be doing that, kind of that blue and pink roles. And so, yeah, every single person has belief systems. We're never going to get rid of all of our belief systems, no matter how hard you try. It's the framework of our identity and who we are. But the point is that we try and kind of uproot the belief systems that are more negative, that are really holding us back from having just a happy, healthy life or relationships or experiences.
Totally. I love that because, my own experience, like you said, we all have them, but it's saying, hey, we obviously all have them, so why not let's investigate a little further of what mine personally are. And like one of mine was, the infertility, and this culture is built, you are not a true woman unless you have a baby, that you can't be a mother unless you birth a physical baby. And I had that deep-rooted belief system which then contributed to the self-hatred of like, I am not good enough because I couldn't have another baby. And like we had to kind of uproot that belief system because that's not true, and that pigeonholes you into only one aspect to be fertile. So it's really allowing you to experience life to the fullest with joy, like you said, by identifying what those negative ones are, right?
Absolutely. And actually, just to touch on, your example of what you were saying is, so we have our experiences in life, but then there's also like collective belief systems and genetic belief systems. So like we inherit through our DNA belief systems. So, you go to the doctor and it's always like, oh, does heart disease run in your family, or cancer? And, we focus on the physical, but no one ever talks about inheriting the emotional and mental aspects. And so we do inherit belief systems. And if you think of, to me, like a collective belief system, that would be like the consensus of the entire world for like hundreds of thousands of years. Like as long as there have been humans, like all that has mattered for a woman, like your only role is to have a child.
Right.
That is it. Other than that, like you have no purpose.
Right.
It's only been in like the last, 40 years where women have had the choice to like have a career or to not have children. So if you're trying to like override hundreds of thousands of years of programming with the last 40 years, like there just is no chance, right? You're just going to naturally have that feeling and that belief of, yeah, if I'm infertile, like I am not a woman, I don't have a purpose as a woman. And you can be independent, intellectual, and logically want no kids. But unfortunately, sometimes that collective genetic energy is still telling you that on a very, very deep level. And then when someone's like, oh, you don't have kids, usually a person gets triggered because it's like, well, now I have to defend my self-worth, you know? So I think it's important to note that all of the belief systems you have, they're not choices, first of all, and they're not just from this life. So we can't blame our parents for everything.
Exactly. You know, and that's such a good way to look at it. And really how we talked about earlier about, you know, zooming out to zoom back in, because it's looking at everything, the collective, what's contributing. It's not just one thing. It's many things. It's many faucets, and it's worth diving into that and understanding that. So then we have more knowledge to attack what issues are going on and what we need to solve and heal. So I love that about the system, which takes me to the next point of, you've taught me a lot about honing in on the connection of emotions and how they govern our organs. So that's, again, zooming out to zoom back in and really analyzing the connections of things and digging deeper and below the surface. So really, can you explain a little bit of what that is, of how our emotions can actually affect our physical bodies?
Yeah. So, you know, everyone has experienced, I think I gave the example earlier of like, it's not appropriate to maybe have an outburst at work or school, or, you know, you're in a place in public and probably don't want to start having a breakdown and crying or screaming or whatever emotion is going on. So, you know, we stuff it down. And oftentimes, you know, even with tears, let's say, if we stuff it down, you feel a lump in your throat. You know, you physically feel a lump in your throat. Tears are physical, right? We see them. So if we're choking them down, those tears are just energetically going within the body, and they're like, okay, we can't do this now, so we're just going to hang out till later. But then sometimes later never comes, you know. So the body is stuck with the energy of this emotion, and then the body's like, hey, what am I going to do with it? Where am I going to put it? And so each organ, from a Chinese medicine perspective, houses predominantly a certain emotion. So it's going to shove it to, it's kind of like different filing cabinets, if you want to think of it in that way. It's like, okay, sadness goes in this drawer, anger goes in this drawer. So if we're looking at the emotion of anger, that one gets sent to the liver specifically, the liver and gallbladder. And so, yeah, anytime that we have even someone who has a lot of gallstones or has to have their gallbladder removed, the gallbladder is all about our decision making. So if we never are not good at making decisions, lots of times we can have dysfunction in our gallbladder. And if we're really, really resentful and angry about not making decisions, and to me, you'll often see this in women, sometimes older generations, where there still is like a really submissive role that they have to play in the household, you know, where the masculine is in charge and kind of dictates what goes on, and you kind of have to just stuff it down, lump it, or leave it. And so whenever there's a lot of resentment and anger and frustration around like not making decisions for yourself, sometimes that can become so intense that you will develop gallstones or even need your gallbladder removed at some point. So, you know, when we start looking at it that way, we can start seeing how these emotions, if they're just getting shoved there for too long, you know, they're reflecting your personality, but they eventually will cause some breakdown. And then, you know, if we look at grief, our inability to grieve, that gets stored in the lungs and in the colon. And so a lot of times when people get like non-bacterial pneumonia, it's a really good indication that they have a lot of uncried tears. So I often find that I'll see that if something has happened, maybe a death in the family, death of a pet, or a huge loss. It doesn't have to be a death, but it's a loss of something you'll never get back. So maybe they got fired from their job that they love and they can't get that job back, and it really broke their heart. But again, it's all about, if you're not processing those emotions, if you're just burying them, they're just getting filed away to be dealt with later. And they're going to rear their ugly heads whether you like it or not.
Yes. Oh, that's fascinating. It's so incredible because we're not getting that in mainstream healthcare. So I love adding this component to it where we can really identify and know who we are and how our body works and how our emotions work. And each person's different, like you said. There's no map for one person. It is very unique for each one, right?
Absolutely. Like I said, everyone's got a chink in their armor somewhere. And, I think we're in a time, I'm just so grateful of the time that we live in. It's such an information age where we have access to so much information, and people are becoming inquisitive and curious, and just the desire to know is really what's kind of sparking, the personal health revolution.
Yes, it's so beneficial to achieve overall health. We live in a world where mental health, it's coming up, it's prevalent, it's a systemic problem, and we need to not just mask it with another pill. Yes, take the medication, but let's combine it with looking at ourselves in a holistic way and healing the whole body, like you said, right?
Exactly, because, as we talked about, medication's important. If you're suffering from depression, get on some medication, get leveled out, and so that you're not going to jump off a cliff. Let's save you from the absolute darkness, but let's also not forget why you're in the darkness. Now you're on the medication, you're good. Now let's look at, why did this happen in the first place? What's going on? And it's not about addressing it so that, maybe you need medication for the rest of your life. Maybe you just have a serotonin imbalance, and that's just the way that your genetics are. But let's also look at what makes you vulnerable to feeling depressed or experiencing depression. Do you have unresolved trauma to deal with? Are you, unfulfilled? Or, what is going on under the surface?
Oh, I love it. I could talk to you forever. I unfortunately have to wrap up, but this is such it's so great to have these different dialogues about things that we don't often talk about in everyday life. And I hope people are getting that maybe I can make that connection, or maybe I should go investigate this further of why and what's the root versus just treating the symptom, because that doesn't actually solve or heal. It's just creating I can take on another day, but it doesn't heal. And that's the importance I want to, you can get to a place of better health by uprooting it at the deep root level, right? Like a weed. You don't just clip the top, you get it at the below the surface, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And so what are you working on? How can people get in touch with you with Bloom Whole Healthcare, and what are some of your next steps?
Yeah, well, as we talk about people getting more curious and more inquisitive, what I'm working on right now is I've actually developed some courses. So those are going to be launching right away. There are online video courses learning about all the consciousness of the different parts of the body, the different organs, the hormonal system, because this information needs to get out there and people are ready for it. So you're going to be able to find that on my website. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And then the next thing coming up in my near future is I'm currently getting certified in human design reader training. And this is my new passion. I am so jacked about it. And basically what we're doing is we're taking your birth data, so the date you were born, the time you were born, and looking at the predispositions that you have in your life to your personality, to how you interpret stress. So even for me, I've just started this work, and it has changed my life. Honestly, it helps me to understand me better, how I'm wired, my husband, my kids, It's giving me more compassion for myself and for them, even just looking at their charts and seeing like what capacities do they have that they're capable of, and then what are the parts that they're not capable of. And more importantly for me, like what am I maybe saying yes to that I don't have the capacity to because I just don't have the energy channels for. So yeah, I'm so interested in it, and I'm doing all the work for that so that I can start doing those readings and those human design charts for others.
Oh, fantastic. And do you have a website?
Yeah, absolutely. It's bloomwholehealthcare.ca.
Perfect. And I'll put up your links and your email as well if people want to get curious and really investigate their health and wellness in a broader whole term. They can get in contact with you. I vouch for Lauren. She's absolutely phenomenal, and just your depth of wisdom. And, you know, like you said, you just started taking courses to help you. I've done that too. I've taken lots of Body Talk courses. I have no interest in being a practitioner, but it has helped me apply those strategies to my own health and wellness. And it's just a fantastic way to improve your overall health.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a great point is I'm developing these courses for anyone. So it's like whether you're just a regular person, but you're just curious, want more knowledge, more insight, or whether you're a practitioner. So, you know, you don't have to, everyone always gets mistaken by thinking like, I have to use this. I have to do something with it. Like, no, sometimes you just read a book for the sheer bloody enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, just whatever place you're coming from, that's where I'm going to meet you at.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. You just opened our eyes, and I've been with you for years, and I'm learning more in this conversation too. So you can always learn more to apply to have a healthier, happier life. And so I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your passion and your knowledge to help people live their best health in their life and bloom in their whole health. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Oh, thank you too. And I'm so glad you have this platform to reach everyone. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Let's just recap what we talked about today. Yes, our body does in fact talk to us.
How to make it in.
Yes, right? It's not a joke. And how to make connections with our illness and dis-ease, with our subconscious and things that are bubbling up below the surface. Ask why. There are so many things that can be powerful and healing just in asking the questions. We also made connections with what our belief systems are, how our emotions govern our organs, and just how we can step into another portal of overall health and wellness. And it's holistic and it's awesome, and I totally recommend it to help each other move into basically just a very good health in our lives, and just take that step, because it's not great to be unhealthy. It's not fun. And so it's a better way for us to take that driver's seat of our own health and wellness and say, yes, I'm going to ask the question, investigate below the surface, and allow myself to be the best version of myself. So thanks again, Lauren, for coming on. That's it for this week's episode. If you want to learn more about my consulting programs, purchase my book, or have me speak at your next event, visit blaisehunter.com. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable, lean into those difficulties, and have those open conversations so we can rise up as the heroes of our lives, and let us breathe fire together. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe and support Blaise the Trail podcast. Reviews are always welcome and very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.